It is harder than ever to get promoted out of the EFL Championship. I am about to tell you why. There's bad news and there's good news. The bad news is this is a nerdy data-led video, which means the good news is you don't have to listen to me give my opinion. You can give yours down there in the comments. But as I always say with data-led videos, please feel free to interpret the data however you see fit. That part of it is subjective, and give others who might interpret it differently to you of the same courtesy. So I have been playing, where's this going? I've been playing with my spreadsheets. And I love to keep track of the rolling 10-year averages in the EFL Championship. It gives us a good barometer for what usually happens. So if strange things are happening, I kind of have a good baseline as to how that compares to history. And I've gone back and looked at the last 5 years worth of 10-year averages. So that takes us back 15 years in terms of data. And up on the screen there is the 2021 average number of points for the previous 10 years, obviously going back to 2011 for every position in the championship. And you can see things I refer to a lot. 45 to survive as a general rule of thumb over those 10 years. You would have survived with 45 points. On average, over that period, you're in the mid-70s if you wanted to get into the playoffs. And our usual rule of 2 points per game to get you automatic promotion held very hard and fast. And I was always very fascinated with that gap between second and third place, where the competition is the stiffest. So, has there been much movement in that year's 10-year averages and last season? So we've run it forward 5 years. I've got all the intervening years. If anyone particularly wants to know them, you can email me for the data. Don't do that. Just go with what I'm saying here. I don't know why I said that. Let's get into this then. And do remember that these are very stable, solid numbers. They've already been averaged over 10 years. So don't expect massive jumps of 5 and 10 points. That's not going to happen. Just remember, an incremental movement on a 10-year average is actually a very big movement in reality when we want to see a trend of what is happening. Let's start with things that have stayed pretty much the same. And look, it's down the bottom of the table where things are most similar, and with a 0 point change and a 0.1 point change, we get the entire bottom three. Look at that. The standard for survival doesn't appear to be changing in the championship over 5 years, which really solidifies these numbers, because we have seen a couple of big relegation numbers, particularly over the last couple of seasons, but they haven't affected the averages yet. Maybe we'll see some rising in that area there above the bottom three. But generally speaking, still on average, Birmingham fans, and who got caught with their pants down this past season on 49. I can't even remember. Cardiff, Plymouth, Luton, wasn't it? Yeah. So things not really moving around down the bottom. And you'll notice the conspicuous absence of anything staying the same in the entire top 10 positions there. You can see 11th, 0 change, 13th and 16th minus 0.1 of a point on average over 10 years. Right, we can double this up now. So we are doubling the change to 0.2 point swings, which then gives us the following positions. And you can see we've finally got something in the top 10 of the table. Still only one position. So we are expecting big changes at the top. I think you know where this video is going right now. So the ones we haven't probably spoken about, you can see they're in 20th place. A little bit of a rise up towards 50 points there. A couple more drops there around the 15th and 17th spots there of 0.2. And to finish in the top half there, 61.8 is now the average. Get yourself over 60 points and you're in with a chance. Interestingly, the first position to come in at the top is fourth in terms of not changing as much as the others. And I think we can probably reasonably theorise that fourth is always interesting. They're normally too far from the second place to be challenging for the top two, but they're normally fairly safe in the playoffs. Look, we've had Southampton and Sunderland win the playoffs from fourth place over the past 2 seasons. So maybe that could explain away that. Right, we've got some 0.3s and some 0.4 changes now. I wonder, will we get anything at the top of the table? No. That's incredible that it's worked out that way. I know I'm properly nerding out about this now, but we're increasing the factors now, and we're doubling up to those 0.4s from a 0.2 and from a 0.2 down to a 0.1, etc. We still only have one of the top 8 positions, so they are the most subject to change, those ones up there. Further on down, I was saying about 21st place. Would we see a rise up there? No, it's actually dropped 21st down to 47 points. So it really does make you feel like they were outlier seasons, these last couple, with the likes of Birmingham and Luton dropping around that 50-point mark. We'll see if it keeps going like that. You know, those averages will go up. 18th place is up 0.3. 14th is down 0.4. Remember, talking about incremental numbers, that is obviously double 0.2. So it is quite a big difference in that regard. 10th place has gone up a lot, hasn't it, to 64.9. And 9th place down 0.3 of a point. Now, this is fascinating because I keep talking about factors of double, and the change is so much more pronounced at the top because there are no changes of 0.5, 0.6 or 0.7 points. It now doubles again in terms of the veracity of change up to 0.8 and 0.9 points. And we're finally going to get some stuff towards the top of the table. And would you Adam and Eve it? It's all of the other playoff positions. And very interesting, look at that. 3rd and 4th is going up. 5th and 6th is going down. We've spoken about the dominance of 3rd against 6th in the playoff semi-final there. Well, one thing's happening to the team that finishes 3rd and something else is happening to the team that finishes 6th. But it is far more unstable than the rest of the table. We are seeing a rise in points in the top 4 and a drop elsewhere. We've spoken about weird championship tables and points distributions and basically the disappearance of the middle order, and you know, anyone above relegation is 5 points away from the playoffs or whatever. Well, here you go with a little bit more evidence for some of my more anecdotal theories. Right, I'm going to add in 2 more, and this is a swing now of an entire point, which obviously is a multiple of 10 of some of those down there, and 1.2 point swing, and we're still not touching the top 2. So put your eyes on 7th and 8th there, and you can see in the chase for the playoffs a definite dropping off of standard and points, and you can debate in the comments whether points being different equates to standard. That's a very fascinating debate that you probably have to be a far more qualified mathematician to have with any credibility than I am. But we are now into the biggest changes in terms of how points are accumulated in the championship, being a drop-off in the teams chasing the playoffs. And you can see there 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th, all amongst the biggest drop-offs there. And go and stick your theories in. I'm sure people are going to say parachute payments, top 4 piling the points on, everybody else struggling, and a chasm is beginning to appear maybe in the EFL Championship. We were already seeing it, weren't we? Look all the way up there at 88.4 and 84.7 back in 2021, where we still would have had a good few years of that sort of thing impacting. So you can see what we're left with. But have a guess, guys, as to the stark change here in instability in points totals, because we kind of had a fair amount of teams on, or a fair amount of places rather, on no change and 0.1. We had 6 of them. And then we had another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all on 0.2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So half of the positions in the league did not move by more than, or by either between 0 points or 0.2 points. Then it kind of doubled to 0.4. Then it kind of doubled to 0.8. And then we had those 2 at 1 and 1.2. My God, it's going to double again. This is stark, miles by absolute miles, the biggest change in average position in the EFL Championship is that the top two teams are scoring more points than they ever have done. And we spoke about the rising tide at the bottom as maybe being a recent thing and a possible outlier. This is holding over 10-year periods, isn't it? Now, we've had a big movement. Obviously, we've had the likes of Burnley scoring 100 points 3 years ago, was it? Then we had Leicester and Ipswich on 97 and 96. And of course, both Burnley and Leeds smacked on 100 points last season. So that standard is getting very high at the top of the table. And I just think, most fascinatingly, there are parts of this league historically that are stable, and disproportionately compared to other areas, it is the top of the table. There's lots of red on there, but the biggest congregation of green is at the top of the table. And by the way, the top two are moving away at double, treble, quadruple, factors of 20, factors of 26 in some instances there, if you don't count the no movers. It's fascinating. So that is a little bit of my findings from having a look at the latest kind of 10-year rolling averages. If you found that really boring and you hate data videos, you've probably already clicked off now, so I don't even know why I'm apologising. I'll give my opinion on some stuff tomorrow. In fact, we've got a whole Q&A to do that. But if, like me, you're kind of fascinated in these things, and what I always like to do, I always like to have a mixture, and I do this when I'm watching football, even in terms of data and, you know, stat number padding and things of that nature. I always like to half use my eyes and then use the data. And if the data says something different than my eyes, say I look more at the data and then go back and look at my eyes. I always think it's a good way to look at both. I know we're going to get people in the comments who will be on the extremities of this particular bell curve. Some people will be purely data. Data tells you everything. It doesn't. Some people will be purely eyes. Your eyes tell you everything. No, they don't. But let's try and have some kind of meeting in the middle and acceptance of the fact that people see things differently in this wonderful life and world that we are living and indeed living in. So let me know your thoughts. Does that reveal anything to you? Do you agree with some of my kind of anecdotal positions kind of being backed up a little bit there? I mean, we've been on about parachute payments and the swelling of points at the top. I was a bit surprised that the rising tides over the last couple of seasons hadn't had more impact down there, but the numbers is the numbers, aren't they? Isn't they? Are they? Yes, they are. I think that's me having spoken and looked at spreadsheets for far too long. Get your thoughts down there in the comments. I will link this morning's video as well about Danny Roll returning to Sheffield Wednesday. Will that swell or compress the number of points they'll be expecting to score this season in the EFL Championship? Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you for Q&A action tomorrow.